So what we have planned on talking about...
Nice little intro, ease our way into it.
So I don't know if you guys have seen the memes, but you've been on Twitter.
Is this only a Georgia thing, or is it
I don't know
nationwide?
if it is.
Okay.
I have no idea. But in Georgia, at least, because of COVID, they were suspending, like, getting in the car and doing, like, the actual driving test. And,
because obviously, close quarters and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense.
Staying safe, which makes sense. Of course, yeah. But DMV is an essential business. People need that sort of things. Essential workers need their licenses and stuff. And in Georgia, because they had suspended that, for those of you who don't know me...
I think we've said this before.
Oh, have we?
I think we have.
We might have.
At least in the roommate tag video.
Okay, which will come out on Friday.
Yeah.
I didn't have a license.
She doesn't have a license. It doesn't drive.
Doesn't drive. And, I got 4 people, which was 4 enough, to tell me about how the suspension, how you could basically just get your license.
The DMV was suspending the driving test.
Yeah.
I think that's what you said. Mm-hmm. And so you just had to show up.
Show up.
That's it.
And
that's it, just show up.
Assumably take the knowledge test. Assumably. That's what I thought.
In order to obviously get your driver's license, you do need to have a permit.
Yes.
So at some point you do have to take a driver's test.
Yeah.
A written test.
Yes. And that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. So me and my dad had a little road trip, and we drove out an hour and a half to the only DMV a week's short notice that would let me sign up for an appointment. And I walk on in, and I'm thinking about, like, okay, I need to take this knowledge test. I've studied for it. I know what these signs mean, blah, blah, blah,
And that's all it is. If you've taken your driver's test, it's just signs.
Yeah, exactly. That's
all it is. And hydroplaning, for some reason, they make it such a big deal to know what to do if you hydroplane.
Yeah.
That's...
Yeah.
It's like the equivalent to, like, quicksand.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, when you're little, you think quicksand is going to be such a big thing. It's like when you get your driver's license, you think hydroplaning is going to be such a big thing.
The biggest thing. I've heard a lot about it,
Heard a lot about her. Good things only.
I actually have we don't have to get there. I have a friend who's gotten in a wreck because of hydroplaning.
Oh, no.
It's fine. All's good.
Okay, that's good.
It's
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways.
Well, that's good. He's alive.
Yeah. He didn't have a car for a while. It doesn't matter. Y'all don't even care. Y'all don't need.
Y'all don't know who this person is.
You don't even know.
Unless you're Will and you're watching. Hi.
Hello, Will. Love you, boo boo. Anyways, so I'm sitting there, hour and a half drive, butt fucking nowhere, just past some state prison, and setting the scene for you guys. Mm-hmm. I got my mask on, the itchy one, the real deal.
God, I fucking hate it.
Yeah, right, and I was sitting there, and I'm, like, showing them all my information. I already did this, like, skip a step, so I let them know that I lost my permit forever ago. And then she goes, okay, great, cool, got all your information in. All right, stand up for the picture. And I'm thinking, the picture?
Mind you, the picture is, like, the last thing that you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, am I not taking this knowledge test?
Yeah.
And then I sit back down. Right? And then she goes, okay, it's going to be $32. And I was like, okay. And I, like, pay. And then she prints it out. And she goes, all right, the real deal will be there in, like, a month. Like, less than a month.
Shit.
And I was like, and I'm smiling because I'm wearing a mask now.
Yeah.
So she can't see. I'm fucking smiling because I'm like, did I really just get my license?
And
I didn't have to take a knowledge test. And she goes, have a good day. And then I'm like, and so I walk out the door. My dad's in the car, like, trying to read my face, read my eyes.
Stay neutral.
Right? And so I go, I shoot him a little thumbs up because I can't smile because I'm wearing a mask. And I get in the car and I go, Dad, I really just finessed that shit. Like, I didn't have to take it. I was handed a driver's license. And I still don't know how to drive, but I'm not going to get on the road. Yeah. I have anxiety.
That's insane. Where it's like, obviously, like, I trust you that, like, you're gonna wait until you're actually, like, comfortable to drive and, like, and all that shit. And, like, keep practicing whatever. But, like, that you could just walk in.
Walk in and get it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. That's insane.
Crazy.
That blows my mind. Because I know there are people out there that, will get your driver's license, and they'll just be out on the roads.
And, we already have bad drivers.
Atlanta's already crazy enough.
We were just talking about it the other day, so if you guys have ever been in Atlanta or any city that has, it's 4 or 5 lanes on 85.
Yeah.
It is such an Atlanta thing.
Just
you can... Yeah, exactly. Somebody will be in the farthest left lane, and they're about to miss their exit, and they just cross 4 lanes of traffic to make it.
I was driving the other day. She was in the car.
Passenger seat, sharp number for you guys, SGL.
And so we were driving, and I was about to miss my exit, and she saw I was so close to just pulling that exact thing, but there was a cop, right behind me. I was like, let me know. So then, obviously, also, if you live in Atlanta or any other city, know that it takes fucking forever just to, okay, now let me just go to the next exit, do a U-turn, get back on the interstate. Oh god, it's a fucking pain. Mm-hmm. But if you're comfortable, you do it,
and that is such an Atlanta thing. And it's even more Atlanta if your ass is in the median.
Oh my god, which we also saw.
We saw that on this day.
We saw one on the median, and then one there wasn't even a median. It was just grass, and
the man was in a truck.
In a truck, he just said, "Mind my own business," and I said, "On your way, sir."
All right, we'll let you.
You know what? I'm not gonna judge because I probably would do the same thing.
But that is just so, because everyone who's ever been to Atlanta, 85 is a nightmare.
And people think, I feel like it's a misconception that people think that Atlantans, ATLians,
if you will,
that people who aren't from the city, that they will do that because they're oh, they don't know the city, they don't know what exits to take, blah blah blah. No, it's because if you're not from the city, you're too scared to cross the 4 or 5 lanes of traffic. If you're from Atlanta, you know that, listen, you can't have any fear on those roads. If you show any fear, if you show a blinker, if you just gotta be confident, you just gotta go for it.
You gotta go. You just gotta cross it.
I feel like I have become somehow a better and worse driver since actually moving into Atlanta.
Oh, that was a snot. Anyway, sorry.
But it's I feel like I've become a better driver in the sense of being able to maneuver quickly in between traffic.
Yes. Defensive driving.
But then also a worse driver in that I will maneuver in and out through traffic just to...
Oh my gosh. And, have we mentioned it? We play roller derby.
I don't think we mentioned it, but we do play roller derby.
We play roller derby.
I think we tried to skirt around it. I don't think we can hide that.
Well, whatever. We play roller derby, and anybody who's ever played roller derby, I think you become like that too
for sure.
When it comes to driving. There's something about you're in that mindset, and you're I'm gonna weave through.
You gotta be looking. You gotta say you got 5 seconds, and you're okay.
Yeah. So anybody who's ever played roller derby probably have felt the same driving.
Yeah. Suddenly you're in your mind, and you're okay, I just gotta get through this pack.
Right.
I gotta get through the pack.
I gotta get through it. And the pack is the majority of skaters on the track. For anybody
roller derby
who doesn't
player,
know. Or you've watched Whip It, so you barely know anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what I wanted to say was, it's been a long time coming for me to get my license, and the fact that I still
much anticipated.
Yes. I had to call a lot of people and let them know.
It was truly amazing.
It was
not a day that I thought I would see anytime soon, if I'm being honest.
But what I wanted to talk about is just I think it should be normalized that you don't have to get your license at 16. I understand that it's very much of a rite of passage, but it's weird how it's so much a part of American society to get your license at 16, and for those who don't, and you've gone through that, you know how shitty the feeling is to not. People really shit on you, and it's kind of fucking crazy. I've had grown adults just say stuff to my face, and not to get all sob story and woe is me and this is why, but I didn't get mine. When I was ready to get my permit, I wanted to, I was super excited. I did everything that I needed to, but it didn't work out. I ran out on 30 days, that your school permission is valid.
Yeah.
And I didn't and I don't want to blame my parents. I don't think that's really fair too. I kind of want to, but at the time, looking back, I realized why it didn't happen at that moment, is because my parents were gonna tell us that they were getting a divorce, and a month later they did.
Divorced kids, you know the timeline.
You know the timeline.
Looking back, you're oh.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what happened.
Right? So I didn't get my permit for a while. And then I did, and then I turned 16, and I mean, even around that time period, like, everything was new. We had moved, my parents were divorced, and me getting my license, me learning how to drive was not a... Oop. Oh no. That just wasn't a priority, you know, and I get it. I get it now, I think. In the moment, it was very frustrating. I felt like it was like, what is it, pulling teeth or whatever, you know, like, even wanting to get my first phone and a fucking iPhone, I had to present my parents a PowerPoint presentation, and it still took them, like, forever to give me one, and, like, fine, whatever, they moved to their own pace, but I hated having people tell me, well, why don't you pester your parents more, why don't you do that, like, it was something that was very much out of my control. And then not only that, but I also developed a lot of anxiety around it, and driving, and I think it was moving to the city and seeing how bad people were at driving.
It's terrifying.
It's very terrifying, super intimidating. The roads in Atlanta are just insane and whack, and
well, because people will cut you off and then act like it's your fault.
Yeah, but even the way the roads are made, like
there's like
stops.
Four-way stops. I swear the streets are so
suburbs.
Tiny.
Yes,
like why are the lanes so incredibly small? I don't understand.
There's always a light out, so I learned. I mean, just being a passenger, I learned what you're supposed to do when the light's out, and
which is no one knows what to do.
Exactly. Which if you should know that what you're supposed to do is treat it as a four-way stop. But anyways, and then it didn't help that my friends who did have licenses and would borrow their parents' car, they had cars. I've been in a couple of fender benders. I've been with people who were new drivers and they've hit people.
It's really scary.
It is scary. And I mean, none of that stuff was that bad. It could have been worse. The worst I've ever experienced was like whiplash, but that didn't help my anxiety. Being in the car with high school reckless drivers didn't help. Just seeing how crazy people are at driving. I mean, and then also, you can't explain anxiety. You can't. At the end of the day, sometimes anxiety doesn't always have an explanation for it.
Well, psychology major here.
Yeah.
Anxiety.
Step on it.
Anxiety actually is, so it's your body's natural kind of defense system. Yeah. But typically what you wouldn't consider anxiety is when you have that feeling of the fear, but there's a reason why. Yeah. That's not anxiety. Anxiety is when you have the fear, but you don't have a reason why. So it's your brain. So it's literally you can't explain why you have that fear, because that's the whole point of anxiety. Yeah. Is you don't have a point to focus that fear or to focus that attention on. Yeah. It just is. Or you don't have a physical thing.
Exactly. And so, at the end of the day, I could come up with all these explanations, but I still can't tell you why driving intimidates me so much. I mean, there's reasons, but then there's also not. I mean, I can remember a time my aunt was trying to convince me to drive because I was old enough to and still had a permit and blah, blah, blah. And I just remember freaking out in the car. And there's so many times I have been behind the wheel just trying to work up the courage to and just breaking down and crying. Or oh my God, whoever's sitting passenger seat trying to help me out gives me one instance of criticism. Or I do one bad thing, because I'm freaking out as I'm driving. So, and when you freak out, you hit the gas and you hit the brakes and it's just the whole shit show.
You tense up and you're just...
Yeah, and then they're freaking out, and that doesn't help, and also the fact that my parents tried to get me to drive stick shift first did not help a lot. So, I mean, there's just so much to it, and then so much that's unexplained as to why I still struggle with trying to learn how to drive, and I'm trying not to tear up. This is actually kind of emotional for me, I guess. Oh my God, ew, this is like therapy. Anyways, just I don't know, I hate that it's such a rite of passage. I think it also intimidates me, fucking up or causing an accident or having people yell at me. I know people have gotten trailed, it is crazy. And I just want to say, it's okay if you don't get your license at 16. I didn't need to because thankfully I was in Decatur, so I could walk everywhere. And Decatur's a suburb of Atlanta. So I could walk everywhere or take MARTA, which is our, like, transportation system, or I had friends who had licenses, like, or I fucking Uber. Lyft and Uber was, like, my little bitch. I mean, not now because of everything, but...
Because of all this.
Because of all this, as the Southerners say, all this. But yeah, like, I mean, and then I would have, like, adults shit on me about it, you know, like, being like, oh, why don't you have it? It's like, okay, well... It's me, but it is also my parents, and, like, why aren't you looking at them? Like, or it would be adults who, you know, I know they struggle with anxiety and depression, but it was, like, weird that they were giving me a hard time with this, when it's like, don't you recognize I'm going through the same thing, you know? And it's just so weird. And I mean, for me, it's really, it's really just the anxiety from it. But I mean, there's plenty of people who don't get their licenses because, I mean, they're just in other positions than I am, you know? Like, they don't have parents who can help them drive. They don't have a
time
car,
aside
you know?
for, you know, being able to practice driving.
Yeah, or, like, their family doesn't have a car.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. Maybe you can't afford to even fucking pay for a permit or a license. Like, that costs money. Your time costs money, you know? Like...
Also, like, you keep saying, like, oh, like, you know, this anxiety without, like, you know, really, like, knowing what... I mean, you're literally driving... I mean, I don't know how much cars weigh, but a shit ton is what they weigh. Driving around this shit ton of metal.
Yeah.
Like, you know, maybe just to people who've been driving a while, like, maybe, like, 30, 40, you know, miles per hour, it doesn't seem like a lot, but that's pretty fast. Like, you know, if you were to get in, like, any type of, like, accident, that's enough to cause damage. So, like, it's completely understandable to have, you know, these anxieties and these fears about driving, because, like, it's a big responsibility.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then also, like, I don't know why, but, like, my mind keeps connecting it back to, like, 16 is still so young. Like, it's so young. And I keep thinking back to how, like, it's expected to, like, you know, like, when you turn 16, like, or at least around that age, you know, that's when you, like, you know, start having sex or whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, having sex and then being able to have your driver's license, those are two, like, really big, major milestones in your life that happen at a really, really young age.
Yes, now that I'm, like, where I'm at in life and I'm the age that I'm at, and I look back at who I was at 16 and what was happening and what was going on, I mean, like, it felt right at the time. It felt like the national average, because I remember Googling that. I was like, what's the average for somebody to have sex? And blah, blah, blah. And it was, like, 17 for girls. And I was like, accurate.
You're like, about a year.
No, it was accurate. It's accurate for me. But I think back to all that stuff, and I was like, I feel like I was too young even then to have been doing any
even
of that.
now, looking, like, physically looking at how, like, 16-year-olds look, and not to be, like, you know, not to be ageist or anything or whatever, but, like, it is, like, once you grow up, even, like, just, like, 5-6 years, like, you realize, like, how young and, like, how kind of naive you are. And then also, because around 16, like, you know, I was going through some, my parents were already divorced, but, like, you know, my dad was moving a couple states away, and, like, just being, and obviously you're a teenager, so you're really emotional, you're experiencing everything for the first time.
It's
and,
so
like,
intense.
Everything just seems so intense. And I remember being in my car and, like, breaking down and crying while I'm driving.
Yeah.
And, like, that's a really scary experience to have, because, like, you know, you have to be coherent enough to, like, be able to drive a car, but then also having these really intense emotions that, like, that come from being a teenager, from being, like, from going through adolescence, that, like, sure, you can blame some on, like, on just emotions and being valid, but then also, and it is valid, but also just being young and experiencing stuff for the first time, it just, there's a lot going on. There's so many factors that you don't think about when you're driving, like being emotional. Yeah. Whether it's being sad, happy, angry, like, that affects your driving so much. And, like, only now that, like, once I'm, like, you know, getting older, like, I realized that, like, how to keep your emotions in check. And even, I remember when I first got my license, I probably didn't listen to music while driving for, like, the first 6 months.
Yeah, I know. I remember being in cars and it's, like, blasting.
Yeah.
I was in
like,
cars
I can do that now.
High, like...
Oh, I think I've driven high, like, maybe once. I've never driven drunk. Or, like, never, like... That's just stuff that's
now that I am in college and an adult, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But when I was in high school, I was like,
Well, like, at the time, you think it's, like, having that privilege of, like, being able to drive and then being able to go from place to place. So you think like, oh yeah, like I'm sure, like I'm drunk, I'm, you know, high. I understand high as being a little different because you're, you know, some people you can, you know, become, I don't know, coherent enough to whatever. But for the most part, driving under any type of substance or like, and under any influence, it does have an effect on your driving.
It does.
And like, I don't think we've ever talked about this, but as someone who has had like a family member that's been affected by drunk driving.
I didn't know that.
That's how my uncle like passed away. I wasn't alive. It was when my mom was like younger. Yeah. But like it's just something that's like very real, you know?
It
like
is.
It's something that you don't really think about in the moment, and then afterwards you're like, holy shit, that's just there's just a lot of factors to consider.
There are. So
which makes sense why like people have, you know, driving anxiety. Like that's a completely normal thing to like to have, and it's just not talked about a lot.
Exactly. And I just at to kind of conclude all this, I just want to say that like it's completely valid to have anxiety about driving, to become of age, to hit that milestone and not get your license. Like, it is okay. Whatever your reason is, you don't owe anyone an explanation. I feel like I had to constantly explain this to people, but they didn't need to know that, and they didn't have the right to that. You know, like, it's hard to constantly remind yourself that it's okay, you know?
Especially when everyone else is saying that, like, why don't you just get it?
Yeah, and it's like, there's so many reasons why it's not. Like, they make it seem so much more simpler than it really is. So, yeah, I really feel for everybody who didn't get a license. I think the one thing that made me feel really great about it is my mom has a friend who lives in a kind of smaller town in South Carolina. She's like, nah, that's fine. I didn't give it until I was 24. And I was like, great.
I know it's really common for, like, people obviously living in the city, but, like, more specifically living in, like, New York.
Yeah.
Oh, I think the average there for people to get their license is, like, 25, like 26, like, much, much older.
Yeah.
Just because of, like, also another reason, you know, economic.
Yeah.
For, like, the environment. Environmental reasons.
Yeah.
You know, obviously we have public transportation and, like, we have alternative ways of transportation that is a little more, like, eco-friendly and, like, that kind of stuff. Where, like, it makes sense in living in, like, cities and stuff like that. Also, you don't always have a place, like, if you're actually in the city. Like, we're fortunate enough where we live to have, you know, to have parking spots and stuff. But, like, if you're actually living in the city, you know, you either have to pay to park, you know, you might not even have anywhere to park. Like, you might not have a parking garage near you.
Exactly.
So it just makes more sense just to either walk places, Uber, we have MARTA, or, like, some type of subway system. It just makes sense to have alternative ways of transportation.
Exactly. And I feel like when I tell people I don't have a license, like, they feel lower of me. They feel like I'm kind of, like, bummy, you know? And it's like, I'm not... I try very hard not to ask people for rides, you know. Luckily, my parents don't live too far away, so if I really need a ride, I ask them. My sister's younger than me, I ask her, but that just proves that the youngest, I fucking paved the way for her. I walk so she could run. But so I ask her. I try not to ask too many of my friends unless it's convenient for them. I offer to pay gas, or like, they just do it from the kindness of their heart. Like, I'm fortunate that I have very awesome friends, family, and stuff. Like, I can make it all work. I happen to keep dating people who have cars or access to cars.
That's one of the requirements. Must have a car.
Must have a car. I need to go places. Or I just try to think, like, I mean, sometimes it's not convenient for me to go somewhere because it's too far out of the way for me to get to. It's too expensive because of, like, Lyft and Uber, which have gone up in price, you know, and I'm not gonna...
ridiculous.
Exactly. I'm not going to pay for their fucking subscriptions. I'm not going around like that.
That's bullshit. I'm like, who's using Uber and Lyft enough to use a subscription?
To pay like $15.99 a month, I think.
And not even for like, is it for free rides? I thought it was just for like a discounted ride.
Yeah, Lyft it's like 15%, and Uber
so
like 10%. It's
not
like
even a free ride.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's so dumb. I remember when it was like $3 or $4, and now it's like
good old days.
$6 and more.
I remember when I used to live back at home, which my hometown is maybe like 30 minutes away from Atlanta. I remember when I used to live at home and I would take Ubers if I was like in high school, like going to a concert or like going out in Atlanta or whatever. I remember taking Uber there and back for the whole night would only cost $30.
Oh my god.
Like there and back.
It's probably close to like $50.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, but I was before all of that. So, I mean, I fucking make my shit work. Even now, I, like, walk to work. I try to think of, like, what's convenient for my life, you know? Like, and I try not to, like, put my shit on other people. You have to when you don't drive, you know, and you have to think about these things. But all in all, I just want to let you guys know, if you don't have a license, or if you're coming up to the age of 16 and you're feeling nervous about it, like, you're completely valid. It's stupid that this is some almost, like, requirement when you turn 16, like, and it's stupid how much shit people give you, your friends, your family, like, your parents' friends, like, it's fucking dumb. But just try and, like, stay above that shit. Try not to let it get to you, even though I know it does. It did for me big time.
But you got your license now.
I have it now. I am trying to learn how to drive. Yesterday was my first time in a while doing it, and I hit a curb pretty hard. My sister yelled at me. She said, "Do you know how expensive tires are?" And I said, "Yes, I do. I'm sorry." But yeah, like, it will happen when you're ready and when you're comfortable, and that's all that fucking matters.
Also, even as someone who's, I like to think, an experienced driver.
She is, very much. She's a very good driver.
Like, there still comes days where, like...
Queen of U-turns, especially when you're not supposed to do one.
You know, you just gotta pop a little U-turn right there. But, like, there comes a time, like, even as you're driving, like, you know, you've been driving for a while, there'll come a time when you're just like, shit, I don't know what to do. Like,
yeah.
Or, like, suddenly, like, you know, it feels like you're driving for the first time again. I don't know. Like, you just get into these weird headspaces.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to explain it, but like, you know, I do get some driving anxiety sometimes. Like, it's not something that ever really goes away, because at the end of the day, you are, I don't know, just when you think of the concept of what driving is and what being in a car is, it's a lot of responsibility, and it's really intense, and people tend to make light of it, which makes you think to, like, make light of it, but then it's not, it's not something that should be, you know, taken lightly, you know?
Yeah.
It's a really intense thing that's just kind of, like, brushed aside. But, like, you know, when you're driving, like, 60, 70 miles down, like, the interstate, and, like, suddenly you're either trying to, like, change lanes, or, like, some dick is trying to cut you off or whatever, like, you just feel, like, suddenly you're like, holy shit, if something were to happen right now, like, I'm going 60, 70 miles an hour, like, I'm probably gonna get wrecked, like... So it's a lot of, like, really intense things that, like, you have to, like, put in perspective that it's totally normal to have these, like, these fears and these anxieties, and not enough people talk about.
Yes, which I think they should.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think we've really... I'm sure we could totally return to this. I'm curious to hear.
Which we'll probably talk about again as, you know, as you continue to drive and, like, learn more.
And I would love to hear other people's thoughts and experiences, especially those of you on YouTube. Like, I would just like to hear that. I think it's comforting to hear more people talk about it. So those of us who are kind of, like, not a part of the norm feel like it's normal.